So let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes and just come into a moment of simple being. Experiencing your body, your mind, and your spirit connected. Existing within a sense of appreciation for the morning, appreciation for the moment. A sense of curiosity about what is. And a sense of humble surrender. And drawing the hands together in front of the heart, we'll lift our voices in one beautiful Om. Take a nice breath in. Bowing the head to the heart, acknowledging self and all that is around the self and within the self. And then draw the face to center and release the hands. And good morning. So this morning, I thought we would talk a little bit about the goddess. And in yoga, that can be a pretty complicated subject. In Hinduism and in all Eastern traditions, there's many different forms of the goddess. And I think in all traditions that are goddess-based, there's not one that I can think of right now where she only has like a single form. In most traditions, she has a multitude of forms because she's complicated, you know. She appears, depending upon what the circumstance is in the form appropriate to the circumstance. So to start with, we can say that in India, the goddess is looked at in two basic ways. And the first would be formless. And this is the Maha Shakti. Or the Parashakti. It's also Maha Saraswati, Maha Lakshmi, and Maha Durga. They don't have a form. They're not things that you can see with the naked eye. We recognize their presence because we recognize what they manifest, but we can't see them. And so for Saraswati, when we hear sound, music, when we see creativity and action, we know that the essence or the energy of that is Mahasaraswati, is the formless aspect of the Divine Mother that is the flow of creativity. She doesn't just manifest it, she actually is that. So when we see consistency, continuity, when we see lush fields of vegetables growing or beautiful flowers blossoming, we know that that is actually Mahalakshmi, the goddess of abundance, the one who both brings forth abundance and the one who is abundance. So everything that has a sense of vibrancy and thriving is Mahalakshmi. But not in a female form, in the form of abundance, in the essence of abundance. And we can't see her specifically, but we can certainly feel her energy. And then Maha Durga, she's got a lot going on. She's courage. She's straightforwardness. She's the truth. She's also an aspect of the destruction that's necessary for new things to come about. So she, particularly in Mahakali, is the fierceness of what is. But the fierceness of what is not personal. Life is not fierce because you're bad. Life is not fierce because you deserve it. Life is not fierce because you've been judged and juried and executed. You know, that's not the kind of fierceness we're talking about. We're saying the fierceness and the straightforwardness of truth. Yeah. And we all, if we look deep enough, could recognize a truth that we have been denying or avoiding acknowledging for the sake of being comfortable, for the sake of being easy, rather than showing up in the warrior mode and saying, this is my responsibility, this is my choice, and I choose to live with the greater ethic, with the greater oneness, with the greater unity. So Durga is the essence of the will to make that choice. And she is also the essence of the expression of that choice in the Maha-Durga form and the Mahakali, which they're almost the same, but then not really. Kali is a little more fierce. She's the one who cuts through the red tape and gets kind of right to the crux of the matter, where Durga might dance a little bit. She might ride the line a little bit and be like, come on, like compassion is overwhelming here. Get to the work, get to the center of the matter. And then when we take too long, then Kali comes about and says, okay, a stark wake-up call. Stark wake-up call. But it's not personal to you or to me or to anyone because they deserve it. It's just what is. It's like, is a hurricane personal? No. A hurricane is just part of nature. It's the fierceness of nature manifesting itself. And it's the same thing in life situations. Yes, we do have a say. Yes, our decisions matter. But, you can commit a heinous act and have the outcome be absolutely full of abundance and benefit. And then you can commit an absolutely, selfless act and have the outcome be completely heinous. So the outcome is not yours. The action and the karma of the action is yours, but not the outcome. Even if you intended, even if you said, I don't like that person, I'm going to go and make their life completely difficult, and you do, and as a result of your actions, something, happens that hurts them, that harms them. The outcome of that action will only belong to you if you take ownership of it. Take ownership of it. Yeah. Take ownership of it. What does belong to you is the karma of the action that is committed through anger and violence. That belongs to you. But the outcome you can't control. Because you could, has anybody here ever experienced, if you've ever been the bully, and you bully the person because you want everyone to see what a horrible person they are, and you want everyone to see what a great person you are, and then what happens is the exact opposite, and the people actually go to the other person and support them, and you're kind of left standing in the midst of your own karma. Yeah. It's happened across the board for pretty much everybody on some level, where we interacted in a way that was harmful, and it actually benefited the individual, actually supported them in some way. And then we feel like we've been left out. So we can't control the outcome. But what does stay with us is the karma of the intention of the action. Okay, so back to the goddesses. So we have the Maha, and the Maha Shakti has no form. The word Shakti just means power. For those in class this morning, the gongs were pretty powerful, right? Yeah. That vibration is Shakti. Could you see it? No. Could you feel it? Yes, because you were paying attention to it. But there's probably other times and other moments in life where you're walking and you're ignoring the feeling. And Shakti is right there with you, in your heartbeat, in the pulsation of your blood through your veins, in the in-breath and the out-breath, in the sneeze, which I might do in a moment because my allergies are acting up today. The power of all those things is Shakti. So she's with us always. If she wasn't with us always, we wouldn't be able to be alive. So she's always with us. And she's always bringing about these other three categories. the creativity and the sound, the abundance, the maintenance, and the destruction, the courage, the clarity, as powerfulness. Then we have the Devis. And the Devis are the manifested forms of the goddess. They are the goddess as a female form, the god as a male form, the manifested form. The Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Durga Kali. The Brahma, the Vishnu, and the Shiva, the Radha and the Krishna. We can go look for pictures right now. The picture on the wall right there is Durga Ma. She has a face. She has a body. She has an existence that is physical. And yes, in the yoga tradition, in the Hindu tradition, in the Indian, what we call the Indian tradition, there was a time when the Devi and the Deva, the masculine and the feminine energies, took form, became physically present in this world in order to experience the Leela, the divine play of existence. And there's many, many stories about their physical existence. One such story is the story of Parvati, who is an aspect of Durga. She's the aspect of Durga that married Shiva. And she's also, therefore, an aspect of Kali. So the story goes that Shiva met Parvati in the physical form of Shiva, met the physical form of Parvati, and fell madly in love with her. Madly in love. And they decided to get married. Parvati's father was a high-ranking temple official person. He wasn't a priest, but he was high-ranking in the temple. And he didn't like Shiva, even though he was a Shivite, which is a person who honors Shiva, sees Shiva as the Godhead. But he didn't like Shiva in the physical form, because Shiva in the physical form was kind of bluish in color. And he didn't wear the traditional garb. He wore a tiger skin. Pretty much that was it, and some jewelry. You know, he was pretty rogue individual. And his hair was matted in dreadlocks. And he wasn't typical. And India, if you know anything about India, India has a very, they have a very specific cultural system that addresses how a person should appear in certain areas. So a woman is always dressed in the sari. Even women who are working on construction sites, it blew me away when I was in India. Like women working on construction sites, laying brick, and they're in the most beautiful, exquisite saris, you know? Absolutely stunning. And the men, they're tailored, you know? Now it varies where you go, but yeah, definitely. So Parvati's father didn't like Shiva because he didn't fit the mold. And he was always worried about what people would say about him, you know, himself. Like he had this high position and he didn't want it to be soiled. So the Shivaratri festival comes around, and this is a festival of Shiva, Shivaratri, Shiva, the night of Shiva. And all night long, there's chanting and dancing and food and celebration of Shiva. And we do that here too. We sit up and we chant all night. And so Parvati's father, he organizes this huge event, but doesn't invite Shiva. Shiva doesn't care. She was like, whatever, you know, doesn't matter. He walks into the house he shares with Parvati, and she's sitting at the table and she's very angry. And he says, my beloved, why are you angry? Leave him to his own karma. Don't worry. It's what it's meant to be. she looks at Shiva and she says, now Parvati is very beautiful. She has long black hair. She's very female. So she's described as having large, firm breasts, round hips, slender figure, large eyes, full, thick, dark hair. She's a beautiful being. She's sitting at the table. She looks at Shiva and she says, I wish to go to my father's banquet and confront him in front of these people who say they honor you but really don't because they're hypocrites. Shiva says, no. Wrong word. This beautiful being leans across the table and becomes Kali right in front of Shiva. Do not tell me no. And Kali, her form is very black, and her eyes are very large and white, bloodshot. And her lips are very red, and her teeth are fang-like. And she has blood dripping from her teeth. And she has a lolling tongue. It's a very long, lolling tongue. She has long claws for nails. She has no clothing except for a garland of severed heads and a skirt of severed arms and legs, because she don't take nothing from nobody. She says, your ego is out of control? Done. She's very straightforward. Well, and you know, no is not a nice word. So she leans across the table, she looks at Shiva and she says, you do not tell me no. And he said, beloved, go. Do what you will. And she returned into the form of Parvati, and she went. And she went and she confronted her father in front of all of the temple officials. But when she walked in, she heard her father talking to a group of people, and she heard him saying, that piece of garbage manifestation of Shiva is ruining my daughter, ruining the world. She got so angry that she said to him, you are a hypocrite. You say you love me. You say you love Shiva. You're a liar, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. You have no space for loving me as your daughter, so I will no longer be here. And she went up in flames, and she went back to the ethers. Shiva felt this. He felt the absence of his beloved one, and he went directly to the banquet. And when he saw the ashes on the floor, he became irate, and a beam of light came out of his third eye, and it destroyed them all. And then he picked up whatever charred remains were left of the physical form of his wife, and he started to run around the world in a sense of deep, deep, deep violent grief. And every time his foot hit the ground, something happened, an earthquake, a tidal wave, a tornado, a hurricane, and the world started to be very abused by his grief. So the heads of the humans went to the minor gods and said, you got to do something. Nobody could think of anything to do because Shiva's terrifying sometimes. It's not going to go up and say, yo, will you stop? No. Yeah, that'll just cause him to end you also. So Vishnu came up with an idea, and Vishnu said, well, I'll run after Shiva, and every time his foot touches the ground, I'll cut away another part of Parvati's body. It'll fall to the ground. Oh, Shiva will get so angry with you for doing that. And he said, no. Wherever a part of the body of Parvati touches the ground will be called a Shakti Pit. That body part will go back to the earth, and there'll be a special energy at that place that human beings for all time will pilgrimage to and hold great festivals and ceremonies in her honor there. So he did this. And when it was done, Shiva fell down into a deep state of mourning and entered into a very, very long meditation, which is another story. And these sites where the parts of Parvati's charred body fell to the ground became called Shaktipeeths. And they're major temples throughout India where you can go there and experience the essence, the energy, the formlessness of the mother, because that is the place where the form landed. But she's right here too, in her forms, She's right here too. There are many such stories in the yoga tradition, in the Hindu tradition, in the what we call the Indian tradition, which is actually the Sanatana Dharma tradition. And what does that tell us? Well, there's a lot of lessons in this particular story. There is the lesson, first of all, of not imposing yourself into someone else's dharmic path. Parvati had a path to follow and a purpose, which in the end was a support to all human beings by becoming the essence of these Shaktipeeths where we can go for healing, where we can go and experience her energy firsthand in the event that we can't find the way to experiencing it right where we are. So Shiva tried to interrupt her path, tried to interrupt the play of this Leela. And so the first lesson is, don't interrupt the play of Leela, because it's not our place. If you see something that is wrong in the world, if you see something that is harmful in the world, then don't go against that, because that doesn't make sense. Violence never ends violence. Instead, be for something. Stand up for something. If you are against war, then don't be anti-war, be pro-peace. And understand what that means. To be pro-peace means that you need to be peaceful. You're anti-death penalty? Don't be anti-death penalty. Be pro-aliveness. What does that mean, though? It means that you need to be working on experiencing your life and honoring all other life and the path that all other lives will take in this life. It's not a matter of telling a woman whether she can or cannot have an abortion. That's none of your business. It's none of my business. That is the woman's business. It's not telling somebody how to make their choices. Those are their choices. But that in your own heart you have a deep compassion for her and for whatever existence there is that might be called a child. But that's their spiritual agreement. It's not your place to superimpose yourself into that. And if we would start looking at things in this world through those eyes, we would understand more about people and harm them less. Does that make sense? Yeah? We would understand more about people and the challenging path that every one of us are on. And we would be less harmful. Some people, they see suffering and they just contribute more suffering. And what Parvati taught us there is, don't contribute more suffering. Don't do that. If people aren't ready, just leave the situation alone. Eventually they will be ready. We also learned that our emotions, when they're out of balance, can cause a lot of harm. Shiva, who in many lineages is the form of the Godhead. So he's like God. He is the form. And yet when he manifests into a physical form, he's got human issues just like we do. And what he illustrates for us in this Leela is that if we're not mindful, our grief, our anger, even our happiness can cause harm to others in our ignorance of it. He wasn't thinking about every time he put his foot down all the things that were happening as a result of that. He was just thinking, poor me, I've lost the thing that I love. He could have taken Parvati's body and made the Shaktipeeths. But he couldn't see that. He couldn't recognize the sacred through the blindness of his own rage. How often are we like that? Where we don't see the sacred and we even deny it through the blindness that our rage causes us. The blindness that our jealousy, our envy, our apathy, our sloth, our greed, our grief, bless you. How blind are we? Vishnu in this instance comes about as a great friend to Shiva and comes about with a solution. But does Vishnu go to Shiva and say, dude, stop. You're being a destructive idiot. Look at what you're doing to the world. No, he doesn't. Vishnu takes an action that will resolve the situation and doesn't tell Shiva what he's doing. I'm not saying be sneaky with people. That's not it. That's not it. So don't misinterpret that. You be the essence of the energy that you know will be healing in any situation. Sometimes when we talk to people, we get all ramped up. And we're like, you're so right, they're so wrong. You're so wrong, they're so right. And we egg people on. And even when we go to that person, we're like, I just love you, so I'm going to tell you what's wrong with you, and I'm going to tell you how to fix it. We egg people on. Rarely do we come to understand that that person has to come into their own realization. We can be a support, but the support can be a quiet support. The support can be by living the example. Yeah. And by providing constant, gentle reminders of the sacredness of this life and the sacredness of all that is. The sacredness of every heart, of every soul, of every being. The sacredness of every breath, of every cloud, of every bird, of every tree, of every rock. The sacredness of all things. I work a lot, and in the past worked a lot more, with children who are in schools for children with behavioral issues. And these are some pretty tough kids. And when I first went into this, my precursor to this was that I worked with gangs in Lakewood, New Jersey, through an organization called Preferred Behavioral Health. And so these were kids who got in legal trouble. And the judge said to them, you're either going to juvie, or you're going to this program, or you're going to do both. And these were kids that, they were in gangs. I mean, violent gangs. And everybody was telling them what was wrong with them. Everyone was telling them how they were social outcasts, misfits. The at-risk youth that I worked with in the school systems, same situation. All kinds of things going on in their life and all kinds of backgrounds, not just gang members, but just children who had rage issues. And everybody's telling them what's wrong with them. When are they going to fix themselves? When are they going to become a good person? When are they going to do this? When are they going to do that? And then I go in and I say, hey, I'm fine with you just the way you are. And their walls would come down almost immediately. And immediately for some of them. Because I'm not telling them what's wrong with them. I'm not telling them that, that they're an issue. I'm not telling them that they're the reason, why there's issues in our society and that they're not enough the way they are. Instead, I'm meeting them right where they're at, and I'm just being me. And I'm saying, I'll hold the space for you for whatever you're going through. I don't understand what you're going through because I'm not you. But if you're interested in learning, let's talk. And if you're not interested in learning, then please just sit and be quiet. And I remember this one time I was working in this after-school program in what was the name of that town? It wasn't Oakhurst. It was just outside Asbury Park. And the kids that were in this program, some of them were gang members. Some of them were just tough kind of inner city kids. They all lived in a really tough area. And this one boy, and he was the oldest boy in the group. He was probably about 15 or 16. All the other kids were interested to take part. And he was like giving dirty looks to people, walking past them and saying things like, you're wasting your time listening to this lady, saying all kinds of stuff that I won't repeat here. And so I just walked up to him and I said, it's not up to me for you to take part. But these people do want to take part. So just do me a favor. And if you're not going to take part, then just go sit down and look at your radio or look at your phone or something. I don't know. Just go do something. And he looked at me, because he thought he was going to get me to be mad at him and to start telling him what was wrong with him. He didn't have an answer for me. So he just went over and he sat down and he started watching. And at some point in this class, and we were doing so many different techniques and practices, I brought them into crow pose, which is a hand balance posture. And he's looking, and I'm teaching, I've got 2 students in front of me, the rest are watching, and I'm like, so this is what it looks like. And these students had done this posture before, and I had been with these students long enough to teach them this. Well, this kid was fairly new. He comes over and he whispers in my ear, do you think you can show me how to do that? And I whispered back, sure. Are you ready to participate? He went, yeah, but I don't want to look stupid. I said, just watch, and listen. And so he did. He stood next to me. And for the next few rounds, he watched and he listened. And then I said to him, now, will you please support this young child in getting into this posture, and I'll support this one. So now he's getting hands-on experience of supporting someone and stabilizing. And then it was his turn, and he came into it. He did a beautiful job, too. Beautiful. And then when he was done, he was so happy with himself and so happy that he was in this program. He came up afterward and he started talking to me. He was like, yeah, what is that all about? We had a great conversation. Don't tell people what's wrong with them. This is what we learned from this story, Just be a support. Just be a support. And they don't need to know you're supporting them. So don't go up to them and be like, I'm supporting you. Doesn't that make you happy? Am I not the greatest friend ever? No. Support anonymously. And let them just find joy. Because you know what happens when you go up to somebody and you say, look at me, I'm supporting you. Do you know what happens?
It's not good.
No, it becomes an I owe you one. Right? So now there's this expectation set. Yeah, no expectations. No expectations. So you are the silent support. And it's not sneaky. Right? It's not to get your way. It's to just support. Period. So back to the goddess. So we have all of these beautiful stories that can support our understanding. And that's why the Devi, the goddess, manifested into human form. That's why she came to the earth. That's why the god, the Deva, came, was so that we could learn through their example. And they also, according to some traditions, just wanted to know what it was like to be incarnated, what it was like to be in this physical form. Because they weren't, they were the ethers. They were space. They're like, wow, the humans are having all the fun. The trees, the butterflies, the bees. Let's see what that's like. So Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Durga Kali are, in many traditions, considered to be the 3 primary forms of the goddess: the creation, the maintenance, and the destruction. Brahma is the creation for Saraswati. Vishnu is the maintainer alongside Lakshmi. And Shiva sometimes called Rudra, is the destroyer, alongside Durga and Kali. Never can there be creation without both the masculine and the feminine. If the masculine is not present, then we're talking about energy only, because the Maha Saraswati has no consort. But the embodied Saraswati does, and that would be Brahma. And together, they are creation. Because once things become physically manifested, like the chair you're sitting in, has both masculine and feminine qualities. The masculine qualities are found more in the wood than the cloth, and the feminine qualities are found more in the cloth than the wood. Because the wood is strong, stable, logical, it's not bendable, it's not mysterious. The fabric is pliable, soft, nurturing, makes you comfortable to some degree. So that chair has both masculine and feminine qualities. So when we start talking about the manifestation or the creation of this physical world, both the masculine and the feminine must be present in order for that to happen. We see Vishnu and Lakshmi in the manifested form as the maintenance of things, as continuing the abundance, and more of the abundance. And then Shiva and Durga Kali as the destruction of things. And destruction can be very harsh, and it can also have a lot of compassion. What happens when the hurricane hits? Our hearts burst open. How can I support these people? How can I support the animals? How can I support whoever and whatever is affected? So there is both the harshness of the storm, but there's also the softness of compassion. And they're present in the same moment, the same destructive moment. And by destructive, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not like a bad word. Everything will be destroyed in this physical existence, because that's what happens. Nothing will last forever, except maybe the 1966 Dodge Dart and cockroaches. And peeps. They may last forever too. But even these three things will come to their logical end, because all things in the manifested world do. Questions?
I was just thinking of, when you're saying about destruction, and I kept coming back to deconstruction.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Absolutely. Because deconstruction is bringing about an understanding of spaciousness and the necessity for things to change. And change is not a necessity because we say so. Change is an inherent necessity in nature itself. Just look at the seasons. Yeah. And even if you go somewhere like the islands, where it's like, oh, it's summer all year. Actually, no, they have seasons too. They have their monsoon seasons. They have their dry seasons. They have their wet seasons. So the seasons, change is inherent. It's a necessity. And it's also inherent in us that we change, not only from infancy to youth to middle age to elder, but that we change every moment, and that we be present to that change. And rather than curse the change, that we just inquire, where does this lead me on my path? Yeah, it's huge. When you start looking at life and change as your path, then you start recognizing that the potential of your spirituality is boundless. And the only thing that is stopping you from knowing who you really are is you. Yeah. It's like, no, I want it to stay this way forever. Forever. Man, think about how much constriction that is. That is so much constriction. And when things are constricted, they can't flow easily. It becomes a battle. And then life is a battle, and we start to feel like life is something that happens to us, and we feel that we don't have control. But the reality is, we never had control anyway. The only thing we have control over is the way we respond or react. That's it. But don't go tell somebody who is in a reactive state, don't react, just respond. What's wrong with you? Calm down. Because as we talked about yesterday at the talk I did at the expo, there's two parts of your brain at a minimum. There's the primal brain, which is at the base of the brain, and there's the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is the logic. It's also the curiosity and the wonder. The primal brain is the survival, is the fight or flight. And when a person is constantly bombarded in life by trauma, disappointment, when their emotions are out of bounds, they're in their primal brain. They're in the place where they're afraid of not surviving. And a person who is thinking mostly from what they call the lizard brain is not thinking about how do I awaken. And even if they are asking that question to themselves, they're not seeing a window of opportunity to begin to explore it. So you saying to them, hey, what's up with you? Just change and you'll be fine. Do the right thing. Stop being angry. Just puts them more into the primal brain. Because now not only is the rest of life attacking them, but you are too. So if you want to be a positive energy in the life of someone who is in that kind of suffering where they can't see the light, then be the light. Don't be the accuser or the blamer. Just be the light. Eventually what will happen is they'll come up to you and they'll be like, why are you so happy all the time? It's irritating. And don't take that personally. That's the lizard brain talking. What they're really saying to you is, why are you happy all the time? And how do I get me some of that? That's what they're really saying to you. And that's an opportunity. It's an invitation for you to say, well, I practice a lot of yoga. I do a lot of meditation. If you ever want to go to a class, let me know. I'd be happy to go with you. But don't say, you should come to class with me. Because then you just open the door for, I don't think I can do that. I work every day. Life is busy. I got to get this other stuff straightened out first. No, by saying to them, you should, puts them right back into that lizard brain again. And there goes all inspiration. But if you can keep them in the frontal lobe, in the essence of curiosity, that's the essence of inspiration. Then you just say, if you ever decide you want to give it a try, let me know. Open invitation. No attachments. Now, you're not a threat. And then they say, well, what day do you go? Well, I don't know. You look at your schedule and let me know, and I'll find some place that's attuned to your schedule. So send me a note. Give me a call. Just don't stop putting boundaries around people that they can't live up to. Put boundaries around yourself. That's what boundaries are for. They're not for other people except to protect them from you. My boundaries that I set in place are to protect other people from me, not to protect me from other people. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. Other questions or thoughts or reflections?
I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but
everything is appropriate.
Sometimes it's hard to think of goddess when you were raised in church.
Oh yeah.
Because you have that black and white kind of mentality in your head.
Completely.
But I do acknowledge that there is a lot of that in different religions, whether it is in Hinduism and in others. I know that in my own African traditions, there is two goddesses that for a long time, I used to always have this affinity to always going to a lake or a river every time I would feel sad. And just being there in that energy and that essence would just calm my spirit. Or later on, reading a little bit more, then I kind of like make the connection with that particular goddess in the African traditions. Plus, I was like, oh, then maybe that's why this is. But there's still a part of me that still struggles with that idea, because in my head, I just want to imagine the physical form of this goddess. But then this other side of me keeps on bringing me back to the church mentality where it's only God or Jesus and that's it.
And just understand that that's resistance and conditioning. And so the condition, so I was raised in the Catholic tradition. I went to Catholic school for 7 years. And in that time, I was told about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In the particular church that I belonged to, the Holy Spirit was of a masculine also, it was not feminine, where in some Christian traditions, the Holy Spirit is represented by the wisdom, which is Sophia. But in the tradition of the Catholic that I was brought up in, everything is masculine. And really, women didn't have a huge place. We couldn't be altar bearers, we couldn't be readers, we couldn't, like in that day, no. And I would ask, I want to be an altar person. No, just sit there and be quiet. And I was always had such an affinity to Mary. I love Jesus too, but I love Mary. Mary was like the mother, I mean, that's what she is, right? Totally. She wasn't like the mother. She is the mother. So I would sit there and I would, I would lag behind the rest of the students when we had church day. And I would just go sit in front of Mary. And I would get in trouble for that. I would get in trouble for sitting in front of Mary when I was supposed to be doing something else. And typically it was always blamed on my girlhood, my femaleness. Yeah. So I became really disenfranchised, and that's my experience. I'm not dissing Catholicism at all. There's beautiful, beautiful teachings there. My problem with the church that I had was that there wasn't a place for me. And if there wasn't a place for me, then why was I born? So there had to be something wrong with this interpretation. All people have a place. All beings have a place. And it took me a long time to become kind of comfortable with this idea that what I was taught wasn't the complete picture. And I love, love, love the Baha'i tradition. They have a book called the Book of Certitudes. They have many scriptures. And they're kind of a branch of Islam. And in their scriptures, they say all religions together unify to become the one religion.
Right. Omniism, they call that, or something.
Right. And all names of God, no matter whether they're masculine or feminine, come together and unify to bring the truth of the one God. And all human beings come together and unify because there is only one humanity. So that brings great comfort to my heart, because what that tells me is that no single religion will tell me the ultimate truth. And I will only ever experience the spoonful of medicine that I've been given. Because the spoonful of medicine is not the same potency as the bottle or the source of the medicine.
I was raised Catholic as well. My daughter goes to Catholic school, and as a senior, they used to do kind of an ecumenicism as part of the religion class, and they dropped it now. And I think the excuse they kind of gave is lame. But I think a lot of kids are moving away from organized religion and are more spiritual. I think they're almost afraid of letting the genie out of the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my experience growing up Catholic, everything with the Virgin Mary focused on her passivity. And her
That's right.
Instead of her strength and what it took to do what she did.
Yes.
But I was the same way. I was always drawn to that. Now being taught by nuns, they were immaculate. They were IHM sisters. Yeah. So they were a little bit more Marian focused.
Yeah.
But I think that focus on that passivity in women, you see it in the abortion debate. Because it's not really about the babies, it's about the women.
Right. It's about keeping women in a place.
It's about the
Completely.
commandments, too. You know what I mean? That's part of the...
But if that's the argument that they're going to use, though, then, again, they're only giving a spoonful of medicine.
And it's man-made, too.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is where did that come from, you know?
Yeah, because the thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
Well, if we're going to say it that way,
Why are we eating meat?
that's right. Completely. I mean, that's that right there, right? Why are you taking the baby away from the cow so you can have veal on your plate? It doesn't make any sense. So to look at that, and to look at that, to try to look at the commandments in their most raw form. If we're going to say, I'm going to live by thou shalt not kill, then apply it across the board.
Yeah, everything has to be universal.
Yeah, otherwise it's a hypocrite. It's hypocrisy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
and the Mother Mary. There's this wonderful author I absolutely love, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and she wrote the book Women Who Run with the Wolves. She's also got The Strong Woman, Behold the Strong Woman, I think it is. I think she's Brazilian or Colombian. Amazing author. And this book is all about Mary, the Madre, and about all of the traditions that embraced her, or where she was imposed through Christianity, or the cultural experience of the mother, even by other names. And she points out quite beautifully that Mary was not passive. She was a single mother, giving birth to a child who was divinely conceived. I mean, she had to go against society to be able to do this. Other women in her place would have probably been burned at the stake, or thrown in jail, or exiled in some way. But she stood her ground, and she followed her dharma. So she was a warrior, but that's not what the church tells us. No, not at all. You're absolutely correct. The mother is no passive. There's a part of the feminine that is passive, but it's not weak. It's not weak passivity and giving my power away. That's not it at all. This goes for men too. Men have a feminine to them, and women have a masculine to them. And the question that we can ask ourselves is, are the masculine and feminine energies within myself balanced to the place where they are both empowered?
Right.
Where I can be compassionate and straightforward.
When I went on my journey with that, I kind of tried to look at it like the angel, the demon, the light, the dark. But what can I do to bring each to their full potential? And I was like, okay, Wicca, church, spiritual church. You know what I mean? I took them all, and that was just where it all began for me. But when I woke up with my spiritual awakening, I woke up about, wait a minute, who's Lilith? Who is Lilith?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What is this Eve?
Yeah.
Story
Who is Sophia? Who's Gaia? Absolutely, you know. And we look at that, and what we learn, no matter what tradition, for the most part, that we're looking at, is that the stories are very similar, exquisitely similar. Sophia is like Mary. She left the community of oneness out of curiosity of what was.
There's a book about her, right?
Yeah, it's the Gnostic scriptures.
Okay.
There is a book called Sophia also, but she originates in the Gnostic scriptures.
I love the Gnostic.
Yeah, and there's a great book called The Wisdom of Sophia.
That's the book.
It's a blue cover book.
I heard they have an audio on it. I want to get it.
And they talk a lot about Jung, because Carl Jung was very much into the Gnostic scriptures.
And the shadow work. And
Yeah,
all that.
yeah. And he talks about how, Sophia left the community of oneness because she was curious about what is. And she felt that she wasn't getting the whole picture. And Sophia means wisdom. So she had to branch out from the constructs so that she could realize herself. It's just a beautiful, scary too in some moments, story about conversion and conformity Yeah, and how she acted against that. So amazing. And so did Mary. Yeah, powerful.
And so did Jesus.
And so did Jesus. Jesus is very in touch with his feminine self as well as his masculine self. He was there for the people, genuinely and authentically. He nourished people, he fed people, he taught people, he held people. He challenged us to not be judgmental in a way that was violent and harmful. He said, "You who is without sin, cast the first stone."
But he also challenged the Old Testament.
That's right. He did. And he challenged our greed. And he challenged our ignorance. Completely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And when I was in college taking philosophy, he was the best philosopher of all.
Yeah.
The greatest philosopher of all.
And there were a number of years where he was not present. There's like those years in his history. And it's understood that he was in India in those years. Yeah.
Just like Sophia.
That's right. He had to leave his community in order to be able to realize a greater wisdom. That's right. Yeah. So now you can ask yourself in your own life, what part of your life do you need to maybe not leave, but understand that there are constraints there that are stopping you from seeing the bigger picture.
It's kind of like a cord cutting.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
Yep. And you don't need to leave necessarily to cut the cord. You just need to cut the cord. And maybe cultivate a relationship with the mother on your terms. Spend more time in nature. Do you know what the name of the goddess of the waters is?
Yeah, Ashun.
Ashun? Ashun.
That's her flower.
Oh, it's so interesting. Ashun, in the yoga, I believe it's Ashwini.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that beautiful? It's Ashwini, the mother of the river. The mother of creeks, streams, and rivers.
Yeah.
That's what is Ashwini. Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, and the flower, you can see her too, right? The budding of the flower and the planting of your garden. Yeah, because the seed energy is the mother also.
Well, there are Mary gardens. There's a history of people planting Mary's gardens.
Yeah. Oh.
That's all through medieval times, and there are certain flowers. A lot of them are blue, but there's also that history of our mother, Blessed Mother, Untire of Knots, Blessed Mother, Help of the Sick, Blessed Mother, Friend of the Poor. There's all of those things that people have brought to that. Sometimes from different cultures. You'll see a Madonna of the corn in Mexico.
Absolutely.
Madonna of the wheat. You'll see, all of that rooted kind of almost in the Mother Earth.
Yeah.
So it's always there. It's just I think right now it's very suppressed.
Yes.
In Western Christianity, it's very, very suppressed.
And one of the things that's happening is that there is a resurgence of the divine feminine happening, which is wonderful. And there's a lot of men that are embracing the divine feminine as being part of the greater truth. But sometimes the way that this is coming about is through anger. And anger can be healthy, but anger can also be a very destructive force through ignorance. And we need to understand that the reason why we are at where we're at right now is because of a series of decisions that were made, choices that were made. And if we continue forward making choices in the same vein as the past and just simply disguising them as feminism, disguising them as the divine feminine, then we're just going to find ourselves in a reverse situation where instead of women becoming artificially, suppressed instead of empowered, we're going to turn it around and find that the men are going to be suppressed and disempowered. That's not the world I want to live in.
Right, we want the balance.
I want the balance.
Generational curse.
Yes, Rich? Yeah, completely, right? We want a world where men and women are empowered, and not just one culture, but all cultures. And this blending thing that's going on, where it's like everybody has to blend into the white culture, is such BS. Like, I don't want to go to other countries and see more of this. I want to go to places and see that. I want the diversity, the beauty of Africa, the beauty of South America, the beauty of Canada, the beauty of Sweden. The beauty of the United States. I want to see the beauty that naturally exists there, not what's been imposed through mission and conversion. To travel.
To see the diversity, to see the different colors, to see the different ways people live and try the different foods. And
Exactly.
That's what makes people want to do that, to travel and go different places. When we go someplace, we don't want to go to McDonald's in a different country. You want to go where the locals go. You want to try what they have.
Even in this country. For those of you who are around my age, if you traveled as a child, when you went to another state, it was like going to another world, you know? The restaurants were different, the people were different, sometimes the language was so different too, and the customs. And now, wherever you go, it's Starbucks, McDonald's, Burger King, and Panera. Yeah. And everybody wears the Gap, you know? And everybody wears the Levi's or whatever it happens to be. And it's like, by losing that diversity, we're really losing something special. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And so it's no wonder. Somebody mentioned, I think it might have been you, Shelley, about the exodus of young people away from the church. And yeah, that's why I'm at Albright. That's why they came. And they said, would you be part of our chaplain team? I didn't go there. I wasn't looking for that. I was like, in my mind, because I have limited mind also, I'm thinking, it'd be really great to get back into a college or university on some level again, but I would have to do it by being a professor, because there's no way that they would bring me in on their spiritual team. Next thing you know, there's somebody knocking at my door saying, we have a problem and we think you can help us.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah, completely.
The little place is ready.
Yeah.
They're thinking outside the box.
Completely.
To try to help their students.
And they're a Christian
and
college.
That they noticed it instead of just disregarded it and pushed it aside.
Yeah.
And said, no, this is the right way. And they opened up the box to allow other people to think different ways.
Exactly.
It just blows my mind.
It blows my mind too.
It's amazing.
And I'm so grateful. Because that's what the world needs. We need to say there's a place for everybody. Together.
Well, and Christians should just be follower of Christ.
Yeah.
Like,
that's what it means.
That's really not about, you have
Christian.
to pray this way, you have to do this, you have to do that, and
yeah.
His teachings, that's what it's about.
Exactly.
It was about his life. I always think that it was about his life, and he died because of the radical teachings he gave us, not because his teachings were showing us that we believe there's separation.
Right.
And that's the sin.
Yeah.
It's all that illusion, and as everything's the same. All the religion, it's all the same.
It is all the same, and I mean there's differences, but the main messages that thread through are the same messages. And in the Gnostic scriptures, one of the things that I love is their explanation of generation and ignorance. And they say there's the pool of oneness. This is the source. So there's this pool of oneness, and the only thing that knows that pool of oneness is that pool of oneness. And that which immediately comes from it. But even that which immediately comes from it in first generation only knows it because it came from it. It's still seeing it from eyes that are outside of it. Now that first generation has a generation of a next generation. And that generation is 2 generations now removed from the source. So it only knows the source through the stories that the first generation tells it. And now that generation brings the third, and the third, the fourth, and the fourth, the fifth. And the 12th generation only knows the source based on the stories that the first 11 generations have told it. Unless they look for direct experience. Then they still don't know the source, but at least they have direct experience of the source, which can then inform the stories they're told by the other generations. This is so important. Yeah. And that's right in the Gnostic scripture. That's what they talk about. That's how Jung interpreted it, and many others interpreted it that way as well. Any other thoughts or questions for today? Yeah. I can write down name of a great book for you to read. Yeah. Very friendly reading. It's beautiful. It's part of a Christian mystical. I can't say it. Christian mysticism. Thank you. Yeah. What was that, Ilona?
What is the title of this book?
I believe that it is called The Wisdom of Sophia, or Knowing the Wisdom of Sophia. It's an older book. It was written by a psychologist.
Yeah, I want to get it on audio.
Yeah, it's such a good book.
My aunt was telling me about that.
Somebody who really loved Sophia borrowed my first copy and never brought it back. And I love that book so much I went and got a second one because it's just a go-to. It's a go-to. Yeah. So let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes. Take a moment to breathe in and breathe out. And perhaps open a space within the heart where the mother can reside. And it doesn't have to be that in this moment you can say, I know you. I have 100% faith in you, devotion to you. Maybe it could just be, I'm open to getting to know you. I know you're there, and I'd like to know more. So please walk with me for a while in this life and empower me to remove the obstacles from my knowing you so that we can have a relationship that inspires life and love and wholeness. And drawing the hands together in front of the heart, together we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a nice breath in. May all beings everywhere find peace, love, light, and happiness. May all beings know their oneness. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Namaste. Thank you all so much for being here today. So good to gather with each and every one of you. Good to see you all. Enjoy your brunch. If you're staying for brunch, enjoy your day, whatever that may bring you.
Sudha, you should make an